What started as a 200 square foot seafood shack is now a $30 million empire, serving over 2 million customers a year. But the secret sauce? It's not just the shrimp trays. It's the storytelling. Michael turned his family business into a media machine, launching a YouTube show that spiked sales over 25% and built a brand that sells itself. Here's how he did it. Michael, we're live. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on. When we spoke a couple days ago, I was just blown away at how sophisticated your business is. I think on the surface, I see all the posts, I see everything that you're doing, but behind the scenes, it seems like a massive operation. Tell our audience that doesn't know who you are. Tell us a little bit about your operation, about your brand, and what you're currently up to.
Sure. Well, first of all, Daniel, thank you for having me on. It's my pleasure to be here.
My pleasure.
So my background, I am the visionary CEO, co-owner of the San Pedro Fish Market, as well as our Kings of Fish TV show, which is currently streaming on Amazon. And then I just recently launched a podcast called Fish Factor, which tells the story of both of those things and what it's like to be in a family-owned business that my grandfather started back in 1956. Corner store, 200 square feet, selling seafood to the locals in the LA waterfront, LA Harbor area. It's a fishing community. San Pedro is the name. It should be pronounced San Pedro, but the locals do not pronounce it that way. And that's how we know if you're a local or not. Eventually, over the decades, and I'm just realizing next year will be our 70th anniversary. We grew it.
Congratulations.
Thank you. We grew it from a small corner store, went down to the LA waterfront, was called Norm's Landing. Originally Vista Seafood, then Norm's Landing. And then they were redeveloping that waterfront to expand what was then known as the Portugal Village. We were in the way. So we moved out of the way, went into a parking lot, rebuilt, reopened, and Good Friday 1982 as San Pedro Fish Market and Restaurant. That transformed us into a very large seafood sort of complex. We started for the first time having a restaurant, fast food area, like a walk-up counter. We had live crab and lobster, which we'd cook for you, and then like a 60-foot long showcase of fresh seafood, as well as a very large area of fresh whole fish. And that year we opened, it rained. Like El Nino, probably the worst El Nino California's had before or since, and as far as I know. But all of our seating was outside, 300 seats. So we almost didn't make it. We innovated like crazy. My uncle just kept coming up with all these crazy ideas. I was only 11, 12 years old at the time, so I wasn't really aware of what was going on. I just knew I had to go to work. And so what he did was he came up with the idea of offering to cook seafood if people wanted to buy it. And that evolved. We added griddles and barbecues, and we added bell pepper and tomatoes and onions, like a fajita, which was becoming popular at the time. It was new in the early 80s. We invented our own seasoning, sort of a Cajun spice, if you will. That would be like the closest comparison to what we created as our signature seasoning. We added garlic bread and tortillas, and it just evolved. And eventually what we did was told people, anything you pick out of our showcase, bring it over to the kitchen, and we'll turn it into these family-style seafood trays. And that became our niche, like the world-famous seafood trays that we sell. Fast forward to, we grew and grew and grew and grew. We acquired the location next door, which was Krusty Krab. We combined our seating. We basically mirrored the offer between the two. We got to 3,000 seats. I started to get very involved with the business about 12 years ago. I guess it would be like 2010, 2012. And I was doing other things. I was kind of in and out. I went to college, worked in banking, worked in insurance, but I just kept kind of finding myself back in the family business. And all of those experiences between college and owning my own restaurant and working in banking and working in insurance, when I'd come back, some of the family members had passed away. And there was this gap where the person, my aunt who was handling our finances, she tragically died. And so no one's like, we don't even know what she was doing, because we're all fishmongers, and she was college educated and you went to college, figure it out. I said, okay, I'll see what I can do. And I sat in her desk with my sister and, this is banking. I worked in a bank for a while. This is insurance. I worked in insurance for a while. This is, accounting stuff. I had my own restaurant for a while. And so I just pulled all those things together, and I was able to help the business grow from there. And we turned it into, as a result of having that background knowledge and seeing what we're doing, I was able to create like a double-digit sales increase by creating a marketing program, improving our financial situation, bringing in some friends I have from my different business networks. And we went from $10 million over the course of a decade to 30 million and 2 million customers a year. And eventually we took marketing to another level with storytelling and launched our web series on, which is now on Amazon. So.
Amazing story.
Almost up to date.
There's so much. Yeah, I think you do. I can tell that you've practiced giving the story many times, and there's so many ways we can unpack it and dig deeper. I'm more so curious about what was the family dynamic like when you were growing up? What was it like to have a family that ran restaurants? And I'm sure that the entire orbit of the family revolved around this one, iconic establishment. What was that like growing up?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So we had sort of if you break it down, there was two families running it, right? My grandfather started it, then he had my dad and his best friend, basically my uncle, really ran the business and grew the business. My dad's philosophy was a little different than his partner, Tommy, who's still there almost every day, by the way, at 82 years old, just to give you an example. Tom
keeps you young.
Yeah. My dad passed away some time ago, but at the funeral, I was talking to his friends, and one of them who grew up working there too and went off into the private sector and became very successful there. He said, career day, they went around the class. We're about 15 years old in high school, and asked everybody what they wanted to do. Tommy said, I want to own the biggest fish market in town. That was my goal, my uncle. And that's what he did. So he was a very hands-on, 7 days a week, micromanaged, like every part of the business he was running and trying to control as much as he could. My dad had a lot of his own ideas, and they had a very interesting relationship. My dad was a lot quieter, kind of kept to himself in a lot of ways, had his opinions, but he he didn't have the same, his drive was different than Tommy's was. My dad was home a lot with us. He took one day off a week. We would go into work with him on Sundays. And so the philosophy was different. What I would hear is a lot of, how we should do it. Like, well, okay, that's interesting. Yeah. And what you'd find is you have this family dynamic of it all worked, and it all ended up in the end being a successful business. But there was always the disagreement, and there was always the debate on what was the best path forward. And really what it turned out was whoever was there most got to make those decisions. So the funny part was once in a while, Tommy would take a vacation, sometimes 2 or 3 week vacation. And then my dad would go and do all the stuff that he wanted to do, but he didn't want to make the commitment to be there 7 days a week because he wanted to be home with us. And so it was interesting to watch. So my dad said, the biggest change I saw, which I always thought was amazing, was my dad had the idea that we didn't really have a very good point of sale system ever. We had various in different areas because as the business got successful, you know what? Make a counter over there, put some of these cash registers, put a kitchen over here, like on the outside deck. We would just throw stuff together to try to handle the crowds.
Yeah.
And my dad had this concern that we're not really accounting for the possibility that there could be people stealing because we didn't have a way to really inventory or keep track of things because it was so insanely busy. Right.
Right.
And so he's like, what I'm going to do is when people come into the fish market to buy fish that they want to have cooked outside, rather than have them then have to go outside and pay again to have it cooked, just make it one single transaction in the fish market, and we'll create ticket books, which seem like revolutionary, right? And these ticket books, they'll take an order. So you want salmon? Okay. You want it cooked? Okay. And we'll train the fish market people to collect all the money. So it actually goes into a cash register rather than a box outside on the barbecue. And the pushback on that, it's going to take too long. We just need to keep move. It's not broken. Don't fix it. So, there was a vacation and my dad took this idea and he had the printer make ticket books and we trained it. And lo and behold, the amount of money that we made went up astronomically high for a single day, which was like, okay, I don't know if people were stealing. I don't know if there was no way to account for it. Like we didn't know, we didn't care, and we didn't look back. It just became the way we did it. So the dynamic in the family was there's always these conversations over dinner. What can we do different? I don't trust this person. This person's that, and this person's doing this, and this person's stealing. And hey, that was my best friend that got fired. There was all this drama. That was like, God, I grew up thinking, I don't like this. And my dad was like, my dad was like when I graduated high school, he's like, take the summer off. I go, what do you mean? He goes, take the summer off. I think you're the only one in the whole family that's going to end up going to college like my sister did. You have money saved. You've been working since you're 10 years old. just enjoy your life because this will be the last chance you had. And I didn't go back for a long, long time. I worked in a lot of different jobs, and I kind of appreciated that I had that different perspective coming back in because really no one else in my family's done anything else. So it's hard to look at what we're doing as right or wrong or better or worse when you don't have something to compare it to. And that gave me such a unique experience of working in banking, working in insurance. I worked in a yogurt store at one point, and a video rental store, which is obsolete now. And I learned so much about how different people ran their business and different practices, but I never worked in another restaurant. So I tried to open my own at one point, and it failed miserably and almost drove me to bankruptcy, thinking I knew more than I knew. But I realized that, like, we don't know how to run restaurants. That's what this arguing was about all the time. We were making up our own systems and figuring out how to plug them in. And the sheer fact that we labored through the breakdowns, and we're fortunate enough to have a waterfront location with a loyal customer base, like a high revenue and high profit forgives a lot of sins.
Absolutely.
So that's what I learned.
And when you came in, what was like the first agenda that you had to work on? What was the first thing you wanted to change?
My family was like, listen, we know you want to go do something else with your education and you don't want to be stuck here. But if you could just help us figure out what our aunt was doing since she passed away, I'm like, fine. And then really all I was trying to do is figure out what she was doing, set them up on a system, and sort of I planned to move on. But what I started to realize was I could see our numbers differently, and I could see what was working, what wasn't. And I'd always had this idea in the back of my head of the family's really good at working inside the four walls of the business, but there's so much missed opportunity outside the four walls.
Yes.
And at one point, my uncle was trying to take our clam chowder and put it into what was called Price Club, later became Costco. And he would talk about this all the time. I had the opportunity. I had the connections. They wanted to place an order, but I didn't have enough money to produce the volume they wanted. And it was a regret that he had. So I thought, well, I would love to take that on as a project and see, because I college and different businesses and networking, I have a lot of contacts. Maybe they can help out. And so what we ended up doing was realizing, well, forget the clam chowder. Everybody's got a clam chowder, but nobody has this seafood tray. And so my project became, how can we put that into grocery stores? So we had to figure out, well, first of all, we don't own our IP. So let's figure out how to do that. So we trademarked all of our intellectual property. We started looking at all of our contacts that we're buying seafood from. A lot of them had packaged meals in grocery, some fresh, some frozen. And I actually spearheaded an entire development to create two versions. One was a fresh product into a Mexican grocery store chain, and then there was a frozen product. Okay. It actually got into Sam's Club at one point. We're about 6,000 stores at one point.
And the fish was like fully seasoned and you ready to eat, or was it completely raw?
What it was, and where I screwed it up, why it didn't work, to fast forward to the end, was like it was our world famous shrimp tray. So what I was thinking was the customer of this product is the customer that comes into our restaurant. And that was a very serious miscalculation. The actual customer is the buyer, who's the grocery store broker or buyer at the grocery store. So I tried to create something that I thought our customers would want to buy, which was the shrimp, bell pepper, tomatoes, potatoes, our seasoning, and the exact oil. This was expensive to make because we're trying to figure out how to do it frozen, not fresh. So we figured out the shrimp was easy. Then we went through all these different potatoes. We ended up having to buy it from a company in Oregon that had to package it the right size, the right pre-boil, so it all cooked together evenly. It's very difficult to get fresh frozen veggies that hold up, but we were able to find a fajita mix of bell pepper, tomato, and onions. And you had to get just how many onions to potato. Like, we had to go through all this stuff, right? And then we had to figure out the seasoning blend. So all this stuff had to come from different companies and then go to a co-packer. And the seasoning blend was the funniest part because we were like, well, we use half an ounce. That should be good for a portion, which would be 8 ounces of shrimp, 8 ounces of potatoes, and 8 ounces of veggies. That's 1.5 pounds product, which, by the way, is a lot for a frozen meal in a grocery store. But we wanted to give the customer the right experience with a good size shrimp, which is where I screwed up because we made it too expensive, right? It was $1 too expensive to really. So, wow. But the funny part was on the seasoning, our chef at the time, when we were experimenting, goes, you need a half ounce. Well, what I didn't realize is there's a difference between a measured half ounce and a weighted half ounce. So when we made it, it was so spicy that nobody could tolerate it. And the reality was it wasn't a weighted half ounce. It was measured, which is really 7 grams. And that's the mistakes we made to try to get to the right formulation of the veggies, the onions, the potatoes, the garlic bread, the shrimp. Actually, not the garlic bread. That was a different project. But when we finally got it, and then we had to find someone that could package oil. Well, it turns out the people that could do seasoning packages in 7 grams couldn't necessarily do oil. So you had to find a different company. So now the expense went even higher because you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different companies. The bag was coming from
No synergies.
Yeah, and the bag was coming from Korea, and it all had to go into a different co-packer, and then for HACCP and SQF2 and all these different qualifications. Like, it's all stuff I didn't know. And then we got the order from Sam's Club, right? Think we're approved, and they're like, send us all these qualifications. We had none of them. We had to rebuild the entire production line in 2 weeks. Different vendors, different qualifications, different suppliers. We got it done, but because we really didn't know what we were doing, and this was the learning lesson there, is we're paying for our own mistakes. We could never make enough product to make it profitable. So we would make it, we would sell it, and then we'd have to buy all these other products. And you couldn't just buy what you need. You had to buy a truckload of shrimp. You had to buy a truckload of veggies. You had to buy 2 truckloads of these bags that it went in, and then master bag. And it was like, you couldn't get ahead of the inventory costs. So eventually, the only time it really worked was during COVID, because nobody could supply anything. So grocery stores were desperate to get whatever, and they didn't care what the price was. So we blew out all the inventory, sold it all at the price we needed to sell it at, and then we just shut it down. Although I will share, there was one other thing that happened. One of our supplier partners did a copycat version of the product. I'm like, they're actually selling it for us, copied it, and then pushed us out of the SKU. And I didn't know this, right? And a friend of ours goes, hey, this looks just like your product, but it's where yours used to be, and it's $5 cheaper.
Okay.
So we opened it up, and it was very comparable. But the thing that was the problem was the spice pouch said San Pedro Fish Market.
Wow.
They actually had our IP inside the bag. And why this?
What'd you guys do?
Well, this was a weird blessing in disguise because, and I learned this too, when we were bringing our formulation for spice to spice mixers. And this is where I'm gonna wrap this right back into family dynamic that you asked me about in the beginning. Okay, guys, we got a company that's going to make our seasoning. I gave them the recipe. They have 3 different variations. What should you like? I do like this one. I don't like this one. This one's okay. Great. I'll go back. Bring back 3 more. No one remembers what they voted for. It wasn't the same vote. They completely mixed it up. We did that basically through 7 or 8 different versions of this now. I got the 12 versions. And it was like, well, last time you voted on this one, this time you don't like. It's the same recipe, but no one could remember. And it was all based on opinion. So the seasoning company told us, by the way, after the 6th iteration, we own the blend. We're not giving you the recipe. So now here I go, as we got everyone to agree on something. We finally got it packaged. We got it sold. It's in the grocery store. It's got our name on it. We didn't have the recipe. So we couldn't even go anywhere else to get a competitive bid because they wouldn't. And I'm not going through this nightmare with the family again of not being able to agree on which one they like. So when this other company, had our IP in, it turned out it was the co-packer that screwed it up. They assumed it was still our product, so they just gave them our intellectual property and our recipe to put in a competing bag that pushed us off the shelves. So the compromise was, I'm going to let this whole thing go. All I want is the recipe. Fine. So
good deal. I love it.
We ended up getting what a nightmare.
I love that. I love that story because you push yourself to get out of your comfort zone and try to find another way to put your brand out in front of consumers.
Yeah.
One thing that I'm absolutely blown away by is your guys' level of success when it comes to marketing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Tell our audience, we talked a little bit about our inspirations in this industry and people that are killing the game when it comes to marketing. When did you decide to make an effort into improving your guys' marketing, and what was that experiment like? Because it seems like it's been a complete success.
Yeah. So while I was gone, and even while I was in the business, when I was doing these other things before I was in the role that I'm in now, I was studying business philosophy in a specific program at a mentor for a long time, business teacher. And what he was working on with us for a long time was the power of business narratives, like the full form that we learned when we were like 6th grade, which was like, the 10 elements of the exposition, and then there's the conflict, and there's a rising action and a resolution and a denouement. And I was like, why are we learning this? I hated this in 6th grade. I don't want to learn it now. And when I had it in the back of my mind, but I just didn't know what to do with it. So as I was thinking about it, social media appears. We're going back like 15 years, say. And as social media appears, you start to see people in blog posts and Facebook and Yelp telling their story about who they thought we were. And one of them was like, well, they're just a big seafood swap meet, like that place down in Ensenada that I've been to, or they're this, or they're that, or this guy owns it. I don't even know who this guy is. What are they talking about? They didn't know our story. And so what I learned was any part of your narrative, your story that you leave blank, any of those elements of the exposition or people will fill it in with what they think the story is. So people were just like, well, I went down there and some guy told me this, it must be true. And it wasn't, it never ever was. So I realized we have to own our own story. We have to start telling that story. So I started experimenting with it in YouTube and Facebook. We were on a couple of different TV shows. Like people would say, hey, we'd like to have you as a guest, or hey, we're filming an episode for this food series. Will you be in it? And what showed up for me was these were great opportunities to tell the story and nobody knew it. And what that turned into was a company came to us and said, we heard you're going to try to set 3 Guinness World Records in a day. And we were. It was for the Port of Los Angeles Annual Lobster Festival that we were doing the lobster portion of. It was a big music festival, but we were just doing the lobsters. And we would do 30,000 pounds of lobster in a weekend at this festival. So we talked to Guinness and they said, we'll send someone out there to watch and we'll let you set these 3 records. Like most in a single container served, most cooked at a single time, and then most served over 8 hours were the records we were going to set. And this company that was making TV shows, and we did a project with them for the Hungry channel on YouTube, which I don't think exists anymore. But they said, we're going to come out and film this because we think we could make a sizzle reel and shop it around as a reality series about your family. So they came out and they did that, and they created an incredible sizzle reel called Fishmongers. They shopped it all over, but it looked so much like Duck Dynasty. I think Duck Dynasty had some bad press at the time, so no one wanted to touch it. So they gave us the sizzle reel. They were friends. We're still friends with them. And we're like, well, this is really cool. I could use this to sell our frozen meals. This could be marketing for that. Mm-hmm. So I went into H-E-B in Texas, big chain, and I played the sizzle reel for them, which you can find it. It's playing on our website if you go to our media page on sanpedrofish.com. And the seafood buyer at H-E-B was like, oh my God, this is like the Dynasty. What channel is it on? I go, well, it's just a marketing piece. There's no other content. Great. So what channel is it on? They couldn't hear. And they didn't want to miss the opportunity. So they bought all the shrimp from us. But I had no other assets to push the sale. So it got into all the H-E-B stores in Texas, but they go, well, when's your TV show out to help? I go, there's no show. There's nothing else but this 3-minute video. I already told you that. And so none of it sold. It was a big flop. And my brother and I were talking about it. And I'm like, I think we could just make this series on our own. Why don't we start finding a team? And so I put a team together, and it was our friend Tim, who was the editor at the time, and still is actually, for Bar Rescue, Iron Chef America, a whole bunch of other shows. And he was interested in getting behind the camera because as an editor, they get all this content and they have to piece it together into a storyline. And he's always frustrated that they didn't get specific camera angles for him. So he goes, I can do this. So I go, great, do it about us. Created a storyline. We made 4 episodes. We called it Kings of Fish. It aired actually yesterday, nine years ago yesterday, the first 4. And our sales jumped up like 25% in the busiest time of the year, July. And we thought, crap, this is totally worth it. So we continued to make those episodes. That became our main marketing push. And then, we put a team together. Now we have a full team. We have a graphic design, web design. We have social media content. We have a PR team, CMO, marketing director. It's actually extremely expensive. And it's a constant battle because the family's like,
yes,
in the 4 walls. Like, just why are we spending all this money on marketing? We're so busy selling shrimp. We're busy selling shrimp because of the marketing. It's actually, It's like synergistic, but it's hard to see it and justify it. So it's like a battle all the time.
So you saw a massive spike in sales after, I'm sure it took 10 years in order to perfect, but you saw a massive spike in sales over time.
If I went back and I matched up our sales against each of the things, like the frozen meals that we launched, the social media stuff that we did, the web series. We even created a line of retail products that you can get on our Amazon store or our website at sanpedrofish.com, like seasoning and spices. And there's also Goldbelly is another one we use. So Goldbelly, I don't know if you've ever been to goldbelly.com, but you can buy food from restaurants. So we're on there. So you can buy our world famous shrimp trays and ship them anywhere in the world. Every time we launched one of those, you saw this increase in sales. And what it worked out to was about 10 to 14% annual increase every year, even during recessions. And even in the pandemic, we did really well because we had these things set up and we had a lot of outdoor seating, which helped us too. But the brand building, we went from $10 million to $30 million in the course of a decade. And what that looked like was a busy season that would start around, say, spring break and kind of climb up to July and then die off the day after Labor Day in September. It became, no, we got busy mid-February all the way through the end of November. And lines are 200 yards long sometimes with 2-hour waits to get in. So the storytelling was what was happening because people were like, I didn't know that was the story behind this place. Now I want to go check it out. And it really made a big difference.
Amazing. I think that so many restaurant operators are always asking me and asking, the internet how they can improve their marketing. And a lot of tools these days are focused on helping them with exposure on search, SEO optimization and getting them to increase their online ordering presence. But I think one thing that I've noticed time and time again, maybe this is something specific to restaurants, but I also see it in other industries. Operators don't like to talk about their story as much, right? I think they're so focused on
marketing, period.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and we take a look at just most recently, Dave's Hot Chicken, right? Like that was a marketing blitz that just caught fire. And here they are selling for over $1 billion. And if there's one message that you would leave to operators that watch this video that are inspired by your story, what's that one thing they can do today in order to make a dent in their marketing?
I really think storytelling is essential because if you don't tell your story, someone else is going to tell it for you, and it's not going to be the story that you want to be told. Like I had a friend who was looking to get in. They were going to buy a seafood chain. He was studying me. He didn't know I owned San Pedro Fish Market. He was my neighbor. And he would tell me, if you open one of these places next to a competitor, like say California Fish Grill or something like that, he brought out examples, you could win on your story alone. Because people want to know the story. When they know the story, they love to own the story. They like to tell people, I know the guy, I know the story, you know the story. So it becomes sort of, it spreads, it really spreads. So the more that you can tell the story, the more people can identify who you are and they want to be part of the story. So don't just tell it, but give them an opportunity to be in it with you. And that'll make all the difference.
I love it. What's next for you guys? What do you have on your horizon in the next couple of years?
Oh man, that's a complicated question.
I know you're super busy these days.
Yeah, I think, well, we have a couple things. One is we're currently producing season 2 of Kings of Fish, and we're looking for sponsors. So if there's any B2B sponsors out there that want to be involved in the storyline, we're open to that conversation. You definitely reach out to me at mike@sanpedrofish.com, or you can go to Kings of Fish. You can go to
all the links will be in the description. All the links will be there.
And you can see what we're doing. That's one thing. The second, by hopefully in the next few days from the time we're recording this, we're going to open phase 2 of our location in the LA waterfront, San Pedro. I call it phase 2 because they're redeveloping it. So we've been working out of a temporary pop-up. This will be a more semi-permanent one with about 1,800 seats right on the LA waterfront. It's basically done. We're just waiting for one more permit. So we'll be open there pretty quick. And after that, we're going to be opening a location on the Monterey Wharf, a Fisherman's Wharf in Monterey, city of Monterey, Northern California. That's a 17,000 square foot empty space. The city worked out a deal with us to take that over. So we're super excited about that. And then we'll be reopening our legacy location, also on the LA waterfront next to the temporary one. That's a 55,000 square foot ground lease. I signed a 49-year lease for that. And that'll basically rebuild what we left for the redevelopment. So that's our big projects right now.
49-year lease.
Yeah, nobody does that.
Incredible. That's incredible. I'm sure you made a deal. Awesome. Yeah. Michael, last question for you. Who in this industry excites you? Who in this industry motivates you? Who in this industry has inspired you for greatness?
I'm actually going to be talking to Wing Lam in a couple of weeks. And I met Wing, over 20 years ago when I saw him speaking at a free lunch breakfast thing that a local radio station put on. I only went there to meet him because I was trying to open a seafood restaurant on my own. I left the family and I ran up to the stage and like, I don't know you, you don't know me. Here's my card. I need help. I don't even know how to pay you. I'll be indebted to you. I'll accept the obligation for future paying you back. And he called me at my restaurant and he gave me all this great advice and I've just become friends with him since. Eventually I had him over, and we still chat and talk, and he's just been, what he's been able to produce with his family business and grow. It's like, I've been trying to do this, falter, fail, succeed, falter, fail, succeed. It's like really inspirational. Helps me not give up, and put it that way. So he's one of those.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. Michael, thank you so much. Thank you for telling your story. Thank you for inspiring other operators to tell theirs. And I'm excited to see where you guys go. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it, man.
Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.